Welcome back, everyone, for another deep dive.
Yeah.
Today, we're going to be looking at Matthew 5:33 to 37.
Okay.
That's the one about oaths.
Right.
You know, the let your yes be yes.
Yeah.
And we've got a bunch of different pastors and their sermon notes and commentaries and things.
Cool.
And we're going to be kind of digging through those today and seeing what they had to say about it.
Sounds good.
Now, one of the things that a lot of them brought up was how this passage was really directed at the Pharisees.
Really?
Yeah.
Interesting.
It wasn't just about, like, swearing in general.
Uh-huh.
It was about how the Pharisees would use oaths to kind of get around actually telling the truth.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
So they were kind of manipulating the system
Exactly.
to appear righteous.
Yeah. And so Jesus was calling them out on that.
Right.
Saying that real honesty goes deeper than just, like, following the letter of the law.
Yeah, makes sense.
And one of the really cool things I saw was that River of Life Church in Virginia.
Okay.
They actually used a scene from the movie A Few Good Men to illustrate this.
Really? Which scene?
You know that famous line, "You can't handle the truth"?
Oh, yeah.
They use that to show how people sometimes just don't want to face the truth.
That's a great connection.
Right. And it really drives home the point that Jesus is making here.
Definitely.
That we have to be willing to confront the truth.
Absolutely.
Even when it's uncomfortable.
Uh-huh.
Now, another church, Mountain Vista Baptist,
Okay.
they had this interesting analogy about oaths.
Oh, yeah.
They said it's like fencing yourself into a promise.
Fencing yourself in.
Yeah. So when you make an oath, you're basically building a fence around your words.
I like that.
Right. Making it so you can't back out.
That's a good way to think about it.
And it really emphasizes how serious our words should be.
For sure.
You know, we should think carefully before making promises.
Absolutely.
Because they carry weight.
Yeah. I mean, if you're building a fence,
Exactly.
it's not something you do lightly.
Right.
So it makes you really think about the gravity of what you're saying.
Now, shifting gears a little bit.
Okay.
City Church Garland had this interesting take on the whole thing.
What was that?
They talked about seeing the law in 3D.
3D.
Yeah, like, you know.
Like a movie.
Well, not exactly.
Yeah.
But the idea is that Jesus is showing us the depth of the law.
Oh.
Not just the surface level stuff.
So it's more than just following the rules.
Yeah.
It's about understanding the heart behind them.
Exactly.
That's a cool way to look at it.
And, you know, then there's the more traditional approach that some churches took.
Like what?
Well, both Corinth Baptist and Community Baptist.
Uh-huh.
They talked about the idea of my word is my bond.
Yeah, that's a classic.
Right. And it really gets at the heart of simple honesty.
For sure.
And it's something that I think resonates with people regardless of their religious background.
Absolutely.
It's just a basic human value.
I think so too.
To be trustworthy.
Yeah, to keep your promises.
Exactly.
Makes me wonder, though.
What's that?
In today's world,
Yeah.
with all the contracts and legal loopholes,
Have we lost sight of the power of a simple promise?
that's a good question.
Like, if our yes really meant yes,
Yeah.
and our no really meant no,
Mm-hmm.
wouldn't that change everything?
It would definitely change how we interact with each other.
For sure.
And, speaking of simple honesty,
Yeah.
Community Baptist had this really relatable analogy.
Oh, tell me about it.
They talked about crossing your fingers behind your back
Uh-huh.
when you make a promise.
Yeah. We've all done that as kids.
Yeah.
It's like a little loophole.
Exactly.
You're saying the words,
Uh-huh.
but you don't really mean it.
And they used that to illustrate how we can sometimes try to deceive even God.
That's a good point.
We might say we're going to do something,
Right.
but in our hearts, we're already looking for a way out.
Yeah. We're not fully committed.
And then City Church Garland,
Okay.
they connected this whole idea of loopholes
Yeah.
to something we all deal with.
What's that?
The speed limit.
Oh, the speed. Yeah. We all know what it is,
Mm-hmm.
but how many of us actually stick to it all the time?
Not many, I'd say.
Right.
We find ways to justify going a little bit over.
Exactly. And it's the same kind of thinking that can happen with God's law.
I see what you mean.
We might know what it says,
Uh-huh.
but we find ways to bend the rule.
To fit our own desires.
Yeah. So City Church Garland used that analogy to challenge us.
To really examine our hearts
Exactly.
and see if we're truly trying to follow God's will.
Or if we're just looking for loopholes.
Yeah, that's a powerful reminder.
It is.
That we need to be honest with ourselves.
Yeah.
And with God.
Absolutely. So it's really about, are we trying to obey the spirit of the law or just trying to find ways around it?
Right, exactly.
And, it's not just about legalistic loopholes.
Uh-huh.
This passage also talks about like a totally different way of approaching conflict.
Oh, okay.
And Warren Wiersbe had a really interesting take on turning the other cheek.
Oh, yeah. What was that?
He said it's not about being passive or just letting people walk all over you.
Uh-huh.
It's about choosing to suffer loss rather than cause suffering to others.
Oh, wow, that's powerful.
Yeah, it's like breaking the cycle of violence
Right.
by absorbing the blow instead of striking back.
So it's not about weakness.
Yeah.
It's actually a really strong choice.
Exactly. And, it's something to really think about.
Yeah, like how often do we react defensively
Right.
when someone wrongs us
Yeah.
instead of trying to understand their perspective?
Or trying to de-escalate the situation.
Exactly.
Now, thinking about how this applies to our everyday lives,
Uh-huh.
James Ryan Smith, in his book, The Good and Beautiful Life,
Okay.
he shared this really interesting statistic.
Oh, yeah. What was it?
He said that research suggests that the average person lies twice a day.
Wow, that's a lot.
It is right.
Yeah.
And it kind of makes you think,
About how common dishonesty is.
yeah, even in like small everyday conversations.
It's like we're so used to bending the truth that it becomes second nature.
And so Bethany EPC Church brought up a really interesting point about the Pharisees.
Oh, what was that?
They said that the Pharisees weren't always telling outright lies.
Uh-huh.
They were creating these complex systems of oaths
Oh, I see.
that technically allowed them to follow the letter of the law,
Yeah.
but still be deceitful.
So it was like a loophole.
Exactly.
They were finding ways to get around the true intention.
Yeah, and it's something we can still see today.
Right, like people might follow the rules,
Huh?
but their hearts aren't really in it.
And I think that's really what Jesus is going at here.
Yeah.
It's not just about outward actions.
Mm-hmm.
It's about the condition of our hearts.
That's where true change starts.
So all these different approaches to Matthew 5:33 to 37,
Yeah.
they kind of make you wonder,
What's that?
how do we actually apply these teachings in our lives?
Yeah, that's a good question.
Especially for those of us who are leading congregations or Bible studies.
Right.
How do we help others understand this passage?
And actually live it out.
Exactly.
It's one thing to know what it says,
Uh-huh.
but it's another thing to actually put it into practice.
And I think one of the key takeaways here
Yeah.
is that we need to move beyond the cliches.
Like, what do you mean?
Like, we can't just give the same old Sunday school answers
Right.
about honesty and integrity.
Yeah, we need to find fresh ways to present these truths.
Exactly. And I think the sermon illustrations we've been talking about,
No.
those are a great example of that.
Yeah, using pop culture references
Right.
or relatable analogies.
Even statistics.
Those can all be really effective.
in helping people connect with the message.
And I think another important thing
Yeah.
is to be vulnerable.
Like share our own struggles.
Exactly.
Because I think people can really relate to that.
For sure.
And it creates a space for authentic connection.
And something else that really stood out to me
What was that?
was the emphasis on the heart.
Oh, yeah.
It's not just about what we do,
Uh-huh.
it's about who we are.
Right? Like our inner motivations.
Exactly.
And let's be real.
Yeah,
That's tough.
it is.
We live in a world where dishonesty often seems to be rewarded.
Right.
And the truth is constantly being manipulated.
So it takes real effort
Yeah.
to resist that.
And to choose honesty.
Even when it's hard.
And one thing that I thought was really interesting
Yeah.
was that several pastors talked about how Matthew 5:33 to 37
Uh-huh.
could actually be a catalyst for societal change.
Oh, wow.
Like, it's not just about personal integrity.
Right.
It's about creating a culture of honesty.
So it's about more than just ourselves.
Exactly.
It's about the kind of world we want to live in.
And I think that's a really powerful idea,
It is.
to think that our words and actions
Yeah.
can actually have an impact on the world around us.
Yeah. And it
Yeah.
kind of makes you
Yeah.
wonder, like, what if our yes really did mean yes?
Yeah.
And our no really meant no? Not just in our personal lives, but like in every area of society.
Oh, wow. Imagine that.
Like, what would that look like? I mean, think about it.
Yeah.
Business deals would be straightforward.
No more fine print.
Exactly. And politicians would actually tell the truth.
Wouldn't that be something?
It would be a whole new world.
And advertising would be honest.
Yeah. No more misleading claims.
And relationships would be built on trust.
Yeah. Where your word actually meant something.
It sounds kind of utopian, doesn't it?
It does.
But maybe that's the point.
You think so?
I think Jesus was pointing to a different way of being in the world.
Oh, I see.
A way where honesty and integrity are the foundation.
Yeah, like a radical shift in how we interact with each other.
And that's where the challenge comes in, right?
Oh, yeah, for sure.
It's easy to talk about these things,
Uh-huh.
but actually living them out,
That's a whole other story.
especially in a world that's so full of dishonesty.
It takes real commitment.
Yeah. And I think it also takes humility,
Oh, how so?
because we're not going to get it right all the time.
Right, well, we're human.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We're going to mess up.
We're going to make mistakes.
And so we need God's grace
Yeah.
to help us get back on track.
Yeah. And his power.
Right. Because we can't do it on our own.
Not in our own strength.
So I think this passage is a good reminder that it's not about being perfect.
No, it's about being transformed.
Exactly. It's about letting God work in our hearts.
And change us from the inside out.
And I think when that happens,
Yeah.
our words and actions will naturally start to reflect that.
Like a fruit of the Spirit.
Yeah, exactly.
Honesty and integrity.
So it's not just about avoiding certain words.
Right.
Or following rules.
It's about aligning ourselves with God's truth.
And letting it flow out into everything we do.
And I think that's what makes this deep dive into Matthew 5:33-37 so powerful.
It is.
It's not just an intellectual exercise.
No, it's a call to action.
It's a challenge to examine our own lives.
And to seek real change.
And to be people of integrity.
In a world that desperately needs it.
So, as we wrap up here,
Yeah.
I want to leave you with this thought.
What if we really embrace this idea
Of letting our yes be yes.
and our no be no?
Mm-hmm.
How would that change the way we lead?
Yeah.
How would it change our relationships?
And our impact on the wild.
It's something to really think about.
It is.
And so we've covered a lot of ground today.
We have.
Looking at all these different sermon illustrations and the historical context.
And the implications of this passage.
And if you want to learn more,
Yeah.
we've got links to all the sermons we talked about.
In the show notes.
So be sure to check those out.
And remember,
Yeah.
this is just the beginning.
That's right.
Keep exploring.
Keep wrestling with these truths.
And keep letting God's word challenge you.
Because that's how we grow.
And that's how we change.
So until next time,
Yeah.
keep seeking truth.
Keep striving for integrity.
And keep letting your yes be yes.
And your no be no.
We'll see you then.